Welcome to the Find Your Voice, Change Your Life podcast with psychologist Dr. Doreen Downing. Listen in as Doreen interviews people who felt they didn't have a voice or who suffered extreme speaking anxiety. You'll hear stories about how they struggled to speak up, what they did to find their authentic voice, and the confidence they now feel to speak up and make an impact. If you want to get started right away to find your voice, download Doreen's free 7-step guide to fearless speaking at doreen7steps.com. And now, here is Doreen.
Hi, I'm Dr. Doreen Downing, host of the Find Your Voice, Change Your Life podcast. And today I have the pleasure of introducing my listeners to one of my coaches. And I would say that Julia, hi Julia, is one of my favorite people on this earth because what she's helped me do is bring out more of my authenticity. And isn't that what I'm all about anyway with this podcast? Find your voice, change your life. There are many ways in which we voice ourselves. And Julia is somebody that's guided me to more of the visual expression of who I am. So I just wanted to say how grateful I am, and I get to highlight this and feature what she does today.
Thanks, Doreen.
Yes. I'm going to read just a quick little note about your bio or the bio that you sent. Julia Stege helps spiritual business people and multi-passionate entrepreneurs to clarify and express their purpose through marketing that attracts their tribe and inspires an authentic connection online. Very short, simple, sweet, and to the point, which is, I think, part of what communication is about when we're trying to reach people. How do we do that? What I'm going to do today with you, Julia, though, is to start more in your history because of the psychology that I bring to this is how do people get to be the way they are? And it usually starts with where we land, in what family, and how we are seen, heard, and applauded and said, yes, go for it, or not. So if you could just give us a snapshot or two of what childhood was like for you.
Well, I was born into a somewhat creative family, at least my father's side. My grandmother was a landscape architect. She started her own business in 1945 and became well known in Connecticut for designing landscapes for individual families, mostly like homes, that look like they just grew that way. And my aunt went to art school from the age of 17 and was a painter and fashion designer. And my father was a writer and a cartoonist. So in a sense, I was encouraged creatively. In another sense, I was discouraged at the same time. Maybe you're not good enough, especially when I didn't get into art school at first. But to that point, they were willing to be open to that I was applying to art school. But when I didn't get in, they were saying things like, maybe you can't do it. So I flipped out, but I went anyway and applied from within and got in, thank God. But then here I am at art school, and there's a lot of artists that were, quote, better than I was. So there was always this sense of, I don't know if I'm really good enough.
Comparing, my goodness.
Yeah, comparisonitis. But in terms of graphic design, I was at the head of my class and I got the best job, and luckily it turned out. But I noticed over time that I didn't fit in the normal marketing scene at all. And I escaped from traditional marketing at the age of 25 and just completely into the unknown. And I did that a few times in my life, just abandoning normal society, standard trajectory, finding myself in midair. kind of like the coyote.
I love that. I love that description of yourself in the world and your sense that you could do that. I think that's one of the things today with listeners is that there are people who have that experience of, and you just kind of opened your arms up like this, like you were flying, flying in midair. But one of the things I've learned from you is that there's an inner system or inner guidance or something, like even though you might have your arms up and woo, where am I going and what's happening and I'm in the unknown, but the trust that there's something else happening, isn't that what you
I
are?
don't know how trust. I don't know. I don't know about trust, but it comes to the point where I just can't not do it. So I'm
uh,
that we're having this conversation. I haven't really thought of it, but I've abandoned the traditional way in a big way several times.
Several times, yes.
Just even going to art school to begin with was not normal.
Why
Going
not?
to man,
Because your family was all kind of in the
kind of,
arts.
my aunt was whispering in my ear, you should go to art
Mhm.
school. Like I said, there was some maybe you're not really good enough conversation. In high school, I was rejected from the Art Honor Society 3 years in a row. And then I was rejected from art school.
Ooh.
Luckily, I got into my major. My major was graphic design. So there were some good things, but I just found that I didn't agree with society, the way that it was presented. I was from the Northeast. They're still puritanical in a lot of ways.
Oh,
They're
yeah,
still
yeah.
kind of rooted
Mhm,
in the Puritan way. And also the Protestant work ethic is a big
mhm.
thing in the Northeast. Like you have to work hard and then you'll be accepted by God or whatever. When I left Manhattan, I was only 25. All my friends had completely just gone right into that whole marketing for cigarette companies.
Oh, Mad Men, Madison Avenue, huh?
Yeah, a little later than Madison though, but yeah,
Uh-huh.
Madison Avenue, exactly. Um, and cigarettes, alcohol, and pharmaceutical drugs and
Wow.
banks.
Yeah.
They had me do some bank stuff. I could do it,
Uh-huh.
but Burger King also, like fast food. So stuff that kills you. That's how they used us. And at a certain point, I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't stand it. So I don't know if that's trust. It's just that I can't deal with it. I went to Illinois, escaping from Manhattan. I went to graduate school in media studies, and that was weird. That was at the beginning of the computer revolution in
Oh,
the
yeah.
80s. So I learned
Punch
how to
card.
computer graphics. It was a little bit more advanced than punch cards. I was doing graphic design using computers and stuff. But still, I escaped from that and went into selling T-shirts at Grateful Dead concerts. This is in the early 90s. Jerry
Yeah.
Garcia was still alive. I was using the computer to design the T-shirts, but I learned that when you work for yourself, you make more money than when you work for other people. I learned that. I could make in a couple of hours hanging out at a football game more than I would make in a week working at a corporation looking at the clock.
Oh.
So I experimented a little, but yeah, it was sort of a revolutionary type.
Mhm.
So it's just a matter of not being able to do things the normal way. I just,
But you had to listen to something that said, I can't take this anymore and I
yeah,
won't. And I think that's
right.
the message I want to zero in on today for the listeners is, are you listening to yourself? Are you that uncomfortable in what you're doing that I keep coming back to willingness or trust, but you're saying it's almost like you get to hell no, no
I
way.
think, well, the universe will conspire on your behalf. I
Ooh, I love
so
that. I love that.
when I was in Manhattan, I had been fired so many times, but then that got me a year and a half of unemployment, which was like being rich in DeKalb, Illinois in the 80s, when your rent is $80. And I was getting like $800 a month from unemployment was sort of bad that I kept getting fired. It was just because either they didn't trust me because my clients liked me a lot. One of my bosses just lost all of his clients because he was a cocaine addict. It was the 80s. He kind of lost the whole Burger King and fired me. I guess you would say I have a low tolerance for no, I can't do this. I
Right.
know that it causes illness if you
Uh-huh.
don't abide by these things.
Right.
And then I had money from my job, so I was able to, I mean, things conspired. I was a part of a group of revolutionaries, and they asked me to move to San Francisco, which was the only place I could think of moving ever. It was like, that's amazing. And there were people there that could help me. And I had some money tucked away from the job, and everything worked out. Then Jerry Garcia died. That was terrible, right? We were
Yes.
relying on the Grateful Dead for money. But then my friend got into computers, website design in 97. And so, hey, could you design these websites I'm programming? Oh, yeah. So almost immediately I was designing websites, and everything just worked out and kept leading me. But then I was in the internet marketing world, which was brand new. And I found that as there started to become a thing called an internet marketing guru, they were just using those same marketing techniques from Madison Avenue.
Oh, fascinating.
They say, I'll teach you the same techniques I used to convince children to smoke cigarettes. It's not untrue. It's a terrible joke, but it's not untrue. How do you trick people into buying from you? So I felt like, well, that's the opposite of what I want to teach. I don't want to teach anything about how, I don't want to help people to lie. So I was already at odds with then the internet marketers from the very beginning. And they start talking about how you have to niche everything into this tiny little box. Like you're supposed to be like everyone else, when actually you need to stand out. And there I found myself again in a situation where I had to say things that were the opposite of what everyone else in the industry says. And I'll tell you, that wasn't exactly easy. I remember the first time I said something like, well, I can't guarantee that being honest is going to get you more clients and make you more money than lying to people.
Oh, wow.
But I can tell you that it is more sustainable and fulfilling.
Yes.
To be honest, to be authentic, and you'll attract people that are like you. But I saw people getting rich off of lying to people. So that seemed to be the way to go. That's still the way they go. And so I had to kind of be the opposite of everyone again. It's gutsy to have a voice, to actually know what you're going to say and say it when you know that other people are going to tell you that you're wrong. I make more money than you, you're wrong. Or, oh, your clients sound terrible. Or other things I've heard. You can't say that. Magical marketing, you can't say that. Like the opposite of what you should be saying.
Well, thank you for the introduction to who you are. And I'm going to take a quick break because I have a couple of questions and I want to bring out a few more of some of your nuggets, your wisdom nuggets. So we'll be right back.
If you want to get started right away to find your voice, download Doreen's free 7-step guide to fearless speaking at doreen7steps.com.
Hi, we're back with Julia Stege, one of my wonderful coaches through the years that's helped me line up more with what's authentic for me as I promote my business online around speaking that is from the heart, from your soul, someplace deeper than just being a performer. So I'm not a public speaking coach that helps people get on a stage to do TED Talks, but I do help people get on any stage in their life because that's what I think. All parts of our life are stages. And Julia today already has shown us some, I think, some really profound ideas about how to be more lined up with yourself. And there's been some patterns. Julia's somebody who gets involved because she's an involver and an action type person, but then she wakes up to the situation and says, oh, this isn't what I want. This isn't what I need. This doesn't feed me. What do I need to do? Oh, I need to leave. I don't know where I'm going. But also, one other thing before I get back to what I want to ask you is that what you told us about the universe conspires so that if you are caught in a trap, maybe that you built for yourself anyway, there are ways. It's not just where there is a will, there's a way, but it is something about lining yourself helps the universe line up with you and open doors.
I believe that. I mean, I have to because that's what's happened.
Yes.
You know, every time I jumped off the cliff, there was something to land on. Every single time, I did some crazier things than I've said, crazier than even following the Grateful Dead on tour. Who does that at age 31? All my friends are getting married and having kids, and I'm on tour. That's crazy. But it was fun. It was fun, and it was a way to have a life that's my life. It's not somebody else's idea of a life.
With that kind of human that you are, which is very inspirational for those of us who come into your sphere, what would you say? I do understand your message being one that is be who you are, which is pretty much what I talk about. You do it by offering these groups and these workshops online. Say a little bit more so people get to know what you do and how they can find you.
Well, the biggest thing I'm doing is I've created a school, online school called the New Renaissance Business School. And through the years, I not only realized that I had multiple creative talents that the society thought I should separate. I mean, from high, you got to either choose to be a designer, a writer, or a counselor, not all three, for instance. I noticed that my clients were all multi-passionate. I mean, from the very beginning of my business back in the 90s, I was serving multi-modality healers and mostly healers and artists. One of my first clients was a feminist astrologer. She used to get flack for that, either from the feminists who thought astrology was wrong or from the astrologers who thought feminist approach was bad. But even just combining those two things, which seems not that big of a deal right now, 25 years later, but there was a trend, a multi-passionate. At first, it wasn't that big of a deal. People were calling me and saying, because I was making websites, do I need 3 websites? I've got 3 modalities, and I would help them to only have one. It was very practical.
Yeah.
But after 20 years and realizing that I was a new Renaissance person, one of my coaches was like, you're a Renaissance woman. I'm like, oh, I realized all my clients were as well, and that the trouble that they would experience in the regular business and marketing world, even the spiritual business and marketing world, was that you have to niche. I mean, it's step one. Everyone has, every single one of them says you have to have a niche. And they don't understand this multi-talented, cutting edge thinking, new world creating person that wants to have a real impact. They don't understand that at all. And like I said, I alluded to, I've been told your clients sound terrible because they can't niche. I'm like, no, I'm the only one that can serve them because they can't niche, because no one else was willing to. And so I found that then again, here I am saying things like, you don't have to niche, that others in the industry will tell me that I'm wrong. they will contradict me with great vigor. But what in the school we're doing is helping spiritual entrepreneur. What is that even?
Mhm.
Like a soul guided. You're in the middle of the night and it says, this is what you're supposed to be doing. Or you have a meditation, you're consciously tapping into what you're supposed to be doing. And it's clearly stating, this is what you need to do. You need to learn this thing and that thing. And they don't seem to go together, but they will for you. It's not a coincidence that you're guided to all these contradictory things. Perhaps there's contradictory according to society, right?
Yeah.
So I'm helping these soul inspired entrepreneurs to do business their way, which is complicated if you're a trainer because you're not really telling people how to do things. You're helping them to know their own way.
Their own voice.
And their own voice, exactly like what you're doing. It's your own way. If there's a problem, if you feel that a certain type of marketing or a certain way of selling or whatever that you've been taught is off for some reason, like, gosh, I don't know why, but I can't do this. Maybe it's because they're asking you to lie a lot of the time. I can't really lie to my clients and expect that. I had to go through all this because they do tell you, in other words, to lie all the time. It's an epidemic of lying or tricking. It's not authentic. And if you notice, like, well, I can't really do that. It feels like a lie. It feels untrue. It feels fake. It feels schmarmy. Then I'm saying, don't do that. Even if everyone else says do that. And trust, there's your word, to trust that the information that you're getting will lead you there. If you are authentic and you are tapping into your higher self and you're saying, look, you told me to attract these people, new Renaissance people, and build a school. Could you give me a little more, like, I'm not gonna like trick them into it. So could you give me a little, what should we do today? And then trust it. But just like everyone else, also feeling sometimes like maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. I need somebody to tell me what to do. And then I usually don't like what they say. So I've gone through all pretty much whatever my clients come to me and say that they've been told, that you're supposed to do this, you're not supposed to do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. And I'm going to have to agree with you that there is a level of trust. You have to trust your guidance.
Listening to you today so far in your history, if people are just tuning in right now, make sure you go back because it's been a totally fascinating history, the challenges Julia's had to face. But I think that along the way, you didn't know that you were trusting because you also just talked about guidance. And the guidance was not to stay where you didn't belong and where it didn't feel right. So at least there was a sense of, even though, anyway, I'm trying to get to the point that after a long time, you learn to trust guidance. And now you teach that.
Yeah.
But you didn't know it in the beginning. You were just doing yourself.
Right. I was
Right?
me. Yeah. I couldn't be anyone else.
Right. And now you're saying this is Yahoo to being yourself and supporting those of us out there in the world that are trying to stay lined up.
There's a good reason to do that because when you're really in alignment, and that means you're following your highest guidance, you are a transformational leader. The world needs that right now. We can't do things the old way. It's going down the tubes if we do. We need to come up with new ways to transform lives. I serve a lot of healers, right? we can't do this healing the same way. We can't continue to rely so heavily on like the material and the drug industry and the doctor's thing and be taken away from our own knowing. I'm not saying anything against doctors. It's just it's too much one way, too little the other way.
Yeah.
And they had to force it out of us, not to get too much into history, but they
Yeah.
did have to force the healing that we already had. We were
Yeah.
using the natural healing modalities. They
Yeah.
had to force them out of us.
Yeah.
So we're bringing that back now, and we're bringing back new ways to transform lives and online. You can do it with people around the world. It's really cool.
It is. Well, speaking of online, we're at the end, and I'd like to make sure that people can follow up and find you online.
But yeah, if you go to magical-marketing.com, so there's a hyphen in there, you'll see my AI painting of myself. That's a whole other thing. Being an artist and getting into AI painting is contradictory according to many other artists, but I like it. I think it's amazing what you can do. So I have an AI illustration of myself playing guitar with doves flying around. And right below that, it says something about Soul Tribe Attraction Playbook. And so if you want to get started with tapping into your soul and discovering who you're meant to serve and getting into alignment with that, I have found that that process that I have there for free on the website is really effective. There's something about focusing in on what it is that you want and being authentic in your voice, to use your words, and what you say, so that your people can recognize you and to be tuned in to what you really, really want, and not thinking that somebody out here has a better idea because they don't know what you're supposed to be doing. They can't really guide you.
This is wonderful.
So,
I hope people will go back with a pencil and write down some of these golden nuggets that you've given today, because it really is inspiration to come back to who we truly are, find ourselves, and then move out into the world with way more confidence. And thank you so much, Julia, for
thank you for
sharing.
having me,
Of
Doreen. It's
course.
a pleasure.
Yeah.
I didn't get to say everything, but then there's more time in the future for connection and getting to know each other better. So I'm happy to get to know folks that happen by your podcast and help everyone to be authentic online in a way that really helps you fulfill your purpose to transform the world.
Yeah. Well, if anybody wants an example, DoreenDowning.com is partly a result of my work with Julia last year. So go ahead.
Yay.
Thank you again, Julia, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today for this episode of Find Your Voice, Change Your Life. Each person Doreen interviews shares what has helped them find their voice. You can learn from these guests and find your voice so you can be confident to speak up and speak out. And remember to download Doreen's free 7-step guide to fearless speaking at doreen7steps.com. We hope you enjoyed the show and will return next time. Until then, goodbye for now.